And we continue at 106 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, yesterday, California Attorney General Rob Bonta held a bizarre press conference where he alleged that 30 probation officers at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall in L.A. County were to be charged with organizing gladiator-style fights among the inmates, whatever the hell that means. But Bonta did just have bonkers claims that can't be backed up. He also had a bucket full of cliches.
These young people deserve every opportunity to turn their lives around and move forward as productive members of society, to leave crime in the past so we can all be safer in the future.
One criminal siding with other criminals.
It's the most bizarre thing I have ever heard. Gladiator fights at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall.
And no truth to it, correct?
Well, if you hear from the probation officers who are afraid to speak out because they'll be retaliated against Crowley style, they cannot defend themselves when they get physically assaulted by the inmates because the police commission, the probation commission, and the state board that regulates juvenile halls has handicapped the officers from being able to do anything and even intervening when a violent outburst occurs. So I don't know if it's necessarily boy fights.
We'll have more on this later on in the program. Right now, it is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the sheriff of Riverside County and a candidate for governor here in the state of California. You can follow him on X at Chad Bianco. Sheriff Chad Bianco, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by. So, not long ago at event in Riverside County, you made it official that you will be a candidate for governor of California in 2026. What made you decide to jump in the race?
It was really basically simple, and it's what everyone else sees in California. We have failed. We are failing our residents, and it is not because of Californians. It's not because of our businesses. It's not because of our law enforcement. It's because government has absolutely failed us in their love affair of criminals and their love affair of special interests that benefits themselves. And as I looked at the people that have announced their candidacy or that were considering their candidacy, I realized we're going down the same path. We're going to do the same thing over and over and over, and in a couple of years we'll be in the same boat as we are right now, if not worse. And from what I see throughout the state, especially traveling the state for Prop 36, people are absolutely tired of California government. They're tired of the direction they're going. They're begging for a leader with integrity. And my 32 years of doing this job, the last 6 as being the sheriff, I have that to offer them. And knowing that I have probably the best chance to appeal to the general public, there was no other thing that I could do. I couldn't say no. I had to do it.
As a candidate for governor with a background in law enforcement, I'd love to have you weigh in on this because recently a Democratic assemblyman from Los Angeles County, Rick Chavez Burr, authored legislation that would essentially criminalize self-defense. If someone breaks into your home in the middle of the night, you discover them in your home and you take out a weapon or you engage with them physically and they're injured in some capacity, you were the one at fault because you were the one that instead of running away or trying to call 911 and locking yourself into a room, you defended yourself, you defended your property. In the eyes of the Democrats in Sacramento, you are the criminal and not the person who broke into your house.
Yeah, this highlights the absolute insanity that is happening in Sacramento. And people get angry when I use the word Democrat versus Republican or whatever the case may be, but we have to completely understand that there is nothing in this state is going right. And everything has to be blamed on the Democrat Party and the direction of the Democrat Party because Republicans have absolutely no say-so, and they haven't had a say-so for 50, 60 years. So this completely shows their absolute disdain for California residents, their hatred of victims, and their love affair of criminals in this agenda to basically create lawlessness in California, because what they are saying is, Californians, you just must simply move aside when someone wants to steal your car, break into your house, harm your kids, harm your wife, harm your daughter, harm your neighbor, anyone, just move aside and let the criminals run the state. And they keep coming up with these bills. And the sad thing about this is that complete moron defended himself and defended this bill when anyone with common sense knows that this is the worst idea that you could possibly come up with.
If a bill like that were to pass, what do you think would be the result? Do you think that people would stop defending themselves if they were to encounter an intruder in their house? Because to my eye,
no.
That's a fight or flight situation. And what they're going to do is they're going to make people like you the bad guy, because the state's going to lean on you to charge the homeowner with the crime or arrest the homeowner.
Absolutely. And I will tell you what, that will never happen. And I hope that every law enforcement official, a leader, anyone with any type of leadership ability would say the same thing, because it is absolutely ridiculous to think that when you are confronted in a life and death situation that you are not to react and defend yourself. That is not only a God-given right, it is a constitutional right, and it is actually a law in California that you can defend yourself. But the Democratic leadership in Sacramento says absolutely not. You don't have that right. We're going to take it away from you, and you just have to give in and let the criminals do and have anything that they want from you.
You mentioned that you traveled up and down the state campaigning on behalf of Proposition 36, which, of course, repealed much of Proposition 47, which was responsible for a lot of the soft-on-crime different pieces of public policy that we've dealt with here in California that has led to a spike in crime. It's led to retail theft. It's led to not being able to buy shampoo at the store without the assistance of an associate because it's behind bulletproof glass. Prop 36 passed overwhelmingly in California. It passed in all 58 counties. I think there was only one congressional district that voted against it, and it barely voted against it. That was Barbara Lee's old district in Northern California. Yet you look at the response in Sacramento from the state legislature and from Gavin Newsom, and they did not seem to get the message. They did not seem to take away that voters are upset with where we're headed in regard to crime. They think that voters got it wrong, and it's their responsibility to push back on voters because voters are dumb or voters are racist or voters just don't understand what they voted for. And so it's their job to make sure that they curb the excesses of the voters at the ballot box. Are you surprised that they seem to have learned nothing from Prop 36?
No, I'm not, because the entire state very quickly better realize that the current Democrat agenda in Sacramento does not care about Californians. It hasn't for decades. They don't care about the Constitution, whether it's the federal or the state Constitution. They don't care about our laws. They just change the laws or make new laws that victimize us or increase our taxes or increase the regulations on our businesses. There is a reason why everyone is fleeing this state, and it is not because of our residents. It is not because of our businesses. It is 100% because of a failed government that lives in a little echo chamber that they don't care what everyone else thinks or believes or wants. They have their own private little agenda that benefits them, and that's truly all they care about, which is exactly why I am running for this position, because you cannot make any changes unless you start from the top. The top has to completely be removed and replaced with people with basically sanity. They have to be sane. And I'll highlight something from your last segment. Our current Attorney General is the biggest embarrassment to law enforcement that has ever lived. He has absolutely no business being in that position. He is a complete embarrassment to all of us that have dedicated our careers and our livelihoods to making sure that people are safe, that laws are adhered to, and that California is a great place to live. And that's another example of those people at the top living in an echo chamber that they don't care about us, regular Californians.
And Newsom, of course, appointed him to be Attorney General when the slot was open. He was in the legislature at the time, the assemblyman representing Oakland, and Newsom was the one that gave him a promotion and made him Attorney General.
It's all the same people. All of the people that are running for governor against me are the ones that put us in this position with their regulations, their passing of laws, their complete disdain for public safety, their reimagine of public safety, which basically just means criminals are victims and the rest of Californians are responsible for them being victims. And it's hard to explain because there is no sane person or sane argument for what they do in Sacramento. It makes no sense, but it's all the same people.
Recently, the legislature passed a bill that would audit many of the homeless advocacy organizations that the state funds one way or another. And the governor, Gavin Newsom, vetoed the legislation. We have seen a lot of corruption in these homeless organizations that take so much of our tax dollars here in California. Most recently, of course, there was a scandal in the city of Los Angeles where one homeless organization threw a contract worth millions of dollars to the woman who runs it, her husband, and another organization. Do you believe as a state we should be auditing these homeless organizations that really aren't producing any results that push the state in the right direction?
Yeah, I don't understand anything that happens or that the decisions that they come up with. But if for all of the listeners, if you can't just sit back and say, my gosh, all of them have to go. We absolutely need leadership. We absolutely need new people because nothing they are doing works. Nothing they are doing is helping. And if you can't take an honest look and say that they have lost billions of dollars in preventing and fixing homeless, while homeless has tripled in the state in the last several years, I mean, there's something very, very wrong with you because it's obvious. The money is being squandered, it's being stolen, it's being embezzled, it's being laundered, however you want to think about it. And isn't it telling that the governor would not pass a common sense bill of hey, can we audit where our money's going and find out where the abuse and the waste is? It is criminal. And put a lawman in Sacramento, and there will probably be a lot of things change, with probably a lot of people being in trouble for the squandering and the misuse of our money.
Voters in 2014 passed a water bond that put money aside, among other projects, for reservoirs. None of that money has actually been used to build reservoirs in the state of California. We learned, of course, after the fires in Los Angeles and Pacific Palisades, that the reservoir in that area was without water and had been without water for 11 months while they were taking bids to repair the roof of the facility. We know that there are other reservoirs in California, including in Palos Verdes, that are empty right now. The governor has the ability to lean on these various local entities to start building these reservoirs so that voters get what they paid for. He claimed that he was doing that, but essentially said, well, we're declaring success because we've got them through many of the administrative application process to get approval to be built, but none of them have actually been built. If elected governor, are you going to lean on these agencies to build these reservoirs that voters have already voted for and allocated money for?
That is absolute common sense that should be happening. And the people that have prevented it will no longer be working for our government because they're working against Californians. It seems like this entire show is highlighting to every single person out there that our government is an absolute failure. And yet they want you to completely forget about reality, deny what you see, deny what you know, forget about all of that, and just believe them that it's a success and they're here to help us and they're going to make it right. It is crazy to even think that they hope that works in this next election, and we will do our absolute best to make sure that the truth is being told and people actually have hope of a future, that someone is running our government in our best interests rather than special interests and friends and friends of friends making billions of dollars off of projects that never happen.
The governor recently convened a special session of the state legislature to quote-unquote Trump-proof the state, where he's allocating millions of dollars to Rob Bonta and the California Department of Justice to launch nuisance lawsuit after nuisance lawsuit against the federal government. Yet he didn't seem to be interested in convening a special session about the insurance crisis in California, where we've seen so many insurance companies move out of state, so many California homeowners drop from their policies, many California business owners drop from their policies as well. We haven't really been moving on fire safety, despite the fact that fires just ravaged Los Angeles County. And we, of course, had the Paradise Fire and other fires, a Camp Fire in Northern California that have been so devastating up there. We're not doing anything special for crime or homelessness. No, he thinks a good use of their time is to allocate money to sue Donald Trump. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there should be more of an incentive for Californians to support me in this endeavor to nuisance-proof California and agenda-proof California. When we have 16,000 residents burned, you've got probably 30, 40, 50,000 people out of their homes. You've got people that their entire lives have been decimated because their insurance dropped them because our state failed to respond to the dire disastrous consequences that could be a fire that we knew were going to happen. And this is what we talk about. This is what he cares about. At the same time, our legislature the other day spent hours arguing about whether Sasquatch should be the state mythical creature. They don't care about Californians. They care about some crazy little world, la-la world that they live in, that and we're all just being victimized by them. We seriously are being forgotten about this crazy little agenda in Sacramento that has its own adverse version of reality that is not what we live in. I mean, the cost of living in California is astronomical, and he wants to Trump-proof California, where Trump is trying to bring relief and bring help to Californians. You can't make it up. It's a bizarre situation we find ourselves in.
Last question before you go. When Rob Bonta, the Attorney General, announced that he would not run for governor, as many expected that he would, he said that one of the reasons that he decided against running for governor was that he believes that former Vice President Kamala Harris would be jumping into the race and clearing the field. She, of course, was an elected DA in San Francisco, Attorney General of California, U.S. Senator in California. She was elected statewide, I think, 3 different times, not counting the 2 times she ran on the federal ticket as vice president, where they carried the state both times. Do you believe that Kamala Harris will clear the field, and do you believe that she is beatable as a candidate for governor?
I 100% believe that she believes she's a candidate for governor, but the people that are already in, at least some of them, will stay in because they know she's incompetent, and they know that all they have to do is show up to a debate, and they will shine over her. The problem with the Democrat Party is they are blind, and they don't necessarily pay attention. I actually hope that they clear the field and it's Kamala Harris, because that will be the majority of Californians will vote against her. 70% voted for Prop 36, and she's the one that gave us Prop 47 by lying to us. So this is going to be an easy win on my part. And I think that some of those Democrats know that even though they bow down to the Democrat Party and they'll do what the Democrat Party says, I think some are going to stand out and say, no, we're not going to, because we know she's going to fail. She has no chance of winning, and they're going to attack her and blame her for things, even though they're the cause of it. It should be, I'm hoping that the majority of the state Republicans get behind one candidate, which unfortunately for everyone else is me right now. And we have a path to a victory here. And if we let the Democrats destroy themselves in primaries, or they can all get out and let Kamala be the nominee, and then we can finally take our state back.
Riverside County Sheriff and candidate for governor Chad Bianco. You can follow him on X at Chad Bianco. Sheriff Bianco, thank you so much for stopping by.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've hit the halfway point of today's show, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All you got to do is go to KABC.com, click on podcast.
And he said absolutely.
Go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes.
Absolutely.
You can do a Google on the YouTube or get that handy-dandy KABC app.
Absolutely.
Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store, the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station.
That,
And download all the podcasts.
That's right. I like that. That was amazing.
All right, we just heard from Republican Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, who is also a candidate for governor. Do you think he has a chance in the 2026 election? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Here's my take. California is a very blue state, albeit one that moved to the right in the last election from where we were in 2020. In fact, we moved further to the right than any other state in the union. And that being said, we were so far to the left to begin with that it's not going to impact the outcomes of any statewide elections, but it does show you where the movement is going right now. It's been a very long time since a Republican has been elected statewide in California. The last time it happened was 2006, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was elected governor, re-elected governor, I guess I should say, and Steve Poizner was elected to be the insurance commissioner. Since then, it's been Democrat sweep after Democrat sweep after Democrat sweep. And certainly that's what people are expecting in the upcoming election. That being said, it is possible to push people too far. And we've seen this happen in other blue states, where states like Vermont, for example, have a Republican governor. In Maine, up until recently, they had a Republican governor. Massachusetts routinely elects Republican governors, although the current governor is now a Democrat. Rhode Island has elected Republicans in statewide races. It is possible, just like the inverse is possible. Kansas has had a Democrat governor. Other red states, you've seen this before. States like Kentucky will elect a Democrat governor from time to time. So the governing party, if they aren't doing their job, can be punished by state voters. That being said, if you're the opposition party and you're looking to field a candidate that's competitive, you have to do certain things. And in California, we're a little bit of a different animal because of how we do the primary. In other states, they have closed primaries where you have one Republican, one Democrat, and then one candidate from each of the minor parties should they decide to run. So you're guaranteed a slot on the November ballot. In California, Republicans are not guaranteed a slot on the November ballot. And you're going to have a bunch of Democrats in the primary who are legitimate candidates who have endorsements, they have money, they have resumes, they have all the things that make you a candidate who could potentially show signs of viability. So if you're a Republican candidate, there's no guarantee that you're going to make it to the November ballot, especially if there are multiple Republican candidates. As of now, there's only one, and that's the sheriff who we just spoke with, Chad Bianco. But there are other Republicans who are rumored to be thinking about making a bid for governor, including Steve Hilton, who appears on this program all the time, friend of the show, used to be the host on Fox News on the weekends. You've all watched him, the British guy with the bald head. Rick Grinnell, who is another friend of the show, the former ambassador to Germany, director of national intelligence, and now he is working for Donald Trump, President Trump, in hot spots all over the globe. He's also the point man on the rebuilding effort after the fires here in California, and he's also running the Kennedy Center, and I think he's in charge of peace in Serbia as well. He indicated that he could potentially be interested in running. If the Republicans are going to have a candidate who can make it on the November ballot, you can't have 3 candidates. You just can't. If Republicans put 3 candidates on the ballot, the Democrats will have 2 candidates on the November ballot, and then voters will be denied a choice of ideology or party preference. You'll be able to choose between 2 Democrats. You will not be able to choose between a Republican and a Democrat. So the first thing that needs to happen if you want a Republican candidate to win as governor is you need to have 1 candidate and 1 candidate only. If you have 3, odds are you lose, because you can't split the pie up in ways that produce a Republican and a Democrat if you have 3 candidates who all have viability, who can all raise money, who can all get endorsements. There are just not enough Republicans in California to get one of the 3 over the finish line and on the November ballot. So the first thing that needs to happen is you need to get the field down from 3 candidates to 1 candidate. Then you're guaranteed a slot on the November ballot. The next thing that needs to happen is that they need to be well-financed, which has not happened in recent cycles. Brian Dahle, who ran last time, the state senator, had no money, had no ability to communicate with people, so he may have had the best message in the world. If no one knows about it, it doesn't matter. You lose. John Cox was an odd man who was very rich and became very cheap the moment he made it on the November ballot. He promised that he would spend a ton of money on himself. After he made it through the primary, he decided that everyone else needed to pay for him, and that never happened, so he lost. What needs to happen this time around is big moneyed players in California who are very upset at the direction of this state have to open up their wallet in serious ways. And by big players, I mean Silicon Valley. We're certainly seeing that happen right now at the federal level, where you have Elon Musk and you have Peter Thiel and you have David Sachs and you have Mark Zuckerberg to a certain extent and others who are actively involved in what's going on right now in the federal government, both professionally and personally, and they're willing to spend their money on it. If they suddenly become willing to do the same thing in California, financing a candidate with $30 to $50 million in the primary is a drop in the bucket to those people. That's nothing to them, but that's the world of difference in a race for governor. That suddenly makes you a player if you have $30 to $50 million to spend in the primary. And you know what? It's worth it to them. It's worth having a state that functions so you can attract people to come work here and live here, because you're in competition with other industries in other states and other countries. And if you want people to live in Northern California, you don't want it to look like a bomb just went off, which is what Oakland looks like now and part of San Francisco looks like and other cities in the East Bay and the South Bay. You don't want that to be your part of your presentation. No one will want to live here if that's the condition of the state, not to mention what things are like here in Southern California. And this has happened before. In California, we used to be dominated by the railroads. And you think of the railroads now and you think of something that you see at, Knott's Berry Farm that get robbed. But in their day, the Transcontinental Railroad was the most cutting-edge technology in the country. And Leland Stanford was the governor of California, and he was in charge of Southern Pacific Railroad. That's why Stanford University is in the South Bay. That's why Stanford University became the tech capital of the world, because of the railroads. And the railroads used to run California government. They decided who was in charge. And they threw their money around, and they threw their weight around, and they made sure that the state that they were going to do business in was a state that was friendly to do business in. And we ended up with very good government for a very long time because of that. Later on, the oil companies and the Chandlers and others became heavy players. But for a long time, it was the railroads that dominated everything. They kept us from going off the cliff. And there was a few times in our history where that very well could have happened. But they did what they had to do to make sure that the adults were in charge. Silicon Valley has yet to do that in California. Socially, they're all very liberal up there. So the Democratic Party speaks to them, at least on those subjects. But when it comes to doing business, and when it comes to having a place that's safe to live in, the Democrats have failed them. If they want to change the way things are done in this state, they need to open up their checkbooks, or at least a handful of them do, and they need to take control away from the Democratic Party. They need to decide which candidate they're going to get behind and put all of their weight behind that candidate. And if you get the dominant industry in the state behind one candidate who's a good, credible candidate, then you have a shot. But if you're going to try to do it the grassroots way and you're going to have multiple candidates, it's not going to work. People keep saying, well, which one are you going to vote for? Which one are you going to get behind? And my take is, well, let's see who can raise the money. Let's see who can get the stakeholders who have the ability to change the result of the election. Let's see if they get enthused about any particular candidate. And if and when there's movement that's all going in one direction, that's when I'll decide. But unless and until that happens, we have a lot of candidates who have a lot of good ideas who can't win a statewide race. The stars need to align. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. I'm just telling you, if it's going to happen, it's going to look something like that. All right, you just heard from Chad Bianco. What do you think? Do you think he has a chance? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Bob writes in, listening live online at Yuma, Arizona, and says, unfortunately, Sheriff Chad has no chance, but you and Randy will have plenty of sound from Governor Kamala.
We are clear and have been clear.
Oh, God. That's the nightmare coming to life.
I will repeat myself.
And we thought we were done with her.
Let's go to Lionel in Riverside. Lionel, hello.
Hey, how you guys doing? Hey, listen, I have grown up in Southern California from South Central all the way to Riverside. I've seen the city change for the worse. This guy, Chad, seems like a breath of air. I'm telling you. He's got everything working for him. And you know what? I would even support him if he needs my help to run for office, because he needs to. Because what we got going on right now is not working. And it seems like everybody's lining their own pockets up. I mean, how many people do you know go into office and they got a base salary and walk out of the office millionaires? Somebody's paying somebody. Somebody's lining their pockets up. It doesn't make any sense. You know, and the fact that he said we should have a right to protect ourselves, and whoever thinks we don't is crazy. He's absolutely right. You got to be out of your mind. The criminals should never have that much power at all.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Dane in Pacoima. Dane, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
You know what? I don't think the state of California as a whole is actually ready for a Republican to run statewide and win. So I think there has to be an intermediary. And I'm going to have to say it, Rick Caruso, and he's got the best platform to stand on, is that he would have been the better choice instead of our current mayor. but he's going to have more common sense decisions and policies, and he won't be so far to the left. And I think when you start running on policies, again, that'll allow Republicans to come in with common sense, hopefully, down the road. But I don't think just right off the bat, there'll never be another Arnold Schwarzenegger just jumping into the fray to win. That won't happen again.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to JB in Riverside. JB, hello.
Hey, how you doing? Appreciate you much. I'm from Riverside County, and I'm actually like the first caller from South Central Watts to Riverside. Bianco's done a great job as a sheriff here in Riverside County. What we don't need is a Riverside County to turn into LA County. I don't know if he can run again, but we know the Democrats going to spend a whole lot of money to keep him from getting in. And for all the bullet points you mentioned, the Republican Party don't have a chance because the Republican Party in California is trash, and they will not support their candidates. You and I both know it. And we see how the Democrats will bond together based on what you just reported with Sharon Bass and how the legislature is going to keep this lying woman in. They're going to back her. They're not going to go against her. So anyway, Chad, I hope somebody gets to him. We need you here. I don't know if he can run again in Riverside County as sheriff. He's a great sheriff in Riverside County. But on the broad spectrum as far as being governor, until the voter rolls are cleaned up, and I'll just close on this, until the voter rolls are cleaned up in California, I just don't see where he would have a chance. As much as I love him, as much as I appreciate what he's done, I just don't see him having a chance. Not here in Cali. Thank you very much. Take care, y'all.
All right. Thank you for the call.